Welcome back to my channel where we're not just dreaming of early retirement, we're making it happen one money move at a time. I'm Remi and I'm here to share my experience and knowledge buying multiple properties to fast track my way to wealth. Homeownership is one of the greatest wealth levers that exists. But sometimes in figuring out how to buy a home, it can be challenging to know how to actually budget. I'm here to share a breakdown of how to budget for a house to make sure that you're as prepared as possible. First and foremost, you want to budget for the close. One thing to consider is that you can put as little as 3.5% down on a home with an FHA loan. But that's not all that you'll have to bring to the closing table. There are also closing costs that you'll have to consider, which include lender fees, prepayments, etc., etc. Typically, you want to have roughly 5 to 6% of the purchase price of a house saved up for the down payment and all of the closing costs associated with that house to provide enough buffer. And that's if you're putting down the minimum of 3.5%. As a general rule of thumb, you want to budget 2.5 to 4% over what you're putting down for closing costs. So after you budget for the close, you want to budget for immediately afterwards, right? So story time. Do not be like me. After closing on my first house, I only had $1,000 to my name, which means I didn't have enough money for things like furniture to put in the house. This is literally the definition of being house poor. So don't tell anyone, but I had to put my furniture on credit cards and then pay those off over time. So don't be like me, budget appropriately based on what you're trying to do with the house. A general rule of thumb is to have around $5,000 for each room that you want to fully furnish. It kind of sounds like a lot of money, but if you think about, for example, your primary bedroom, a bed frame, a mattress, a dresser, things like that, those start to add up quickly, especially if you want to invest in quality items. So budgeting enough to make sure that you can furnish the house over time is super important. Then lastly, you've budgeted for the close, you've budgeted for immediately afterwards, so like right after you buy the property. Now you want to budget for the long term, right? So you want to make sure that you have enough money that if situations come up, if there are issues with the property that weren't caught during inspection phase, you have enough money to cover those expenses. For example, again, when I bought my first property, there was a leak in the front yard that was not caught during the inspection, and after all was said and done, I owed $800 to a plumber to get that leak fixed. It may not sound like a huge sum of money, but when you've already shelled out thousands and thousands of dollars in down payment and closing costs, that can be rough. Having a reserve for things that come up will help you feel financially prepared and put you in the driver's seat, especially if it's not a newly built home. With new construction homes, a lot of things are covered under warranty, so you don't have to worry about the upfront cost that may come with fixing something. For a resale home, I recommend having around $3,000 in a reserve for things that may come up that were not caught during the inspection, or issues or things that break during the first year. And for homes that are 15 years old or more, I actually recommend doubling that because that's around the time where things start to potentially break down. Homeownership is extremely exciting, but budgeting properly will help you feel prepared and make sure that the process is smooth. I would love to hear from you. Let me know what you think about the tips that I shared and how you personally would budget for a house and stay financially fabulous.